oftentimes people do competitor analysis, but it's a one and done thing and it's not being referenced after that. But there's so much value in understanding how your competitors are growing, how they're adjusting to their market, because oftentimes you can tell what threats you might be facing based on how they're readjusting, or threats that they could be facing that you could take advantage of in some ways.
Hi everybody, welcome back or welcome to another episode of Ship It and Sip It. I'm very happy to have a new guest in the studio today, Uma Patel. She is an entrepreneur in residence at Wizard Ventures and the co-founder of Tona.so, which is a competitor monitoring platform that launched this summer and made a big splash on Product Hunt as well. So we're going to get into all that. But first, Uma, how are you doing today? And what is the latest with Tona?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm doing well. It's pretty warm here in Berlin, so it feels like summer still. With Tona, like you said, we launched a little over a month ago. So a lot of customer discovery calls. We just onboarded some interns, which has been exciting to have more support, and released a new feature, which I can get into a little bit later.
Super. All right. In terms of a roadmap for today's show, we're going to talk about your background and how you found a role in Wizard Ventures, what competition monitoring means for startups, and what Tona really does for other founders, what the go-to-market strategy looked like, and also what's next for the product and maybe for you as well. But I've talked with a couple dozen founders so far in the show, but you're the first entrepreneur in residence that I've talked to.
Yeah.
And I believe you're the first founder or guest from Berlin. So a couple of firsts today. Can you share what that looks like at Wizard Ventures and why you're excited to be in this role?
Yeah, so that title was new to me as well when I joined, and I think those roles can vary depending on who's hiring and what they're looking for. I think with Wizard Ventures, the goal with the entrepreneur in residence role was someone to spearhead Tona as the only full-time employee and to get us from launch to growth. And for me, it's working alongside the co-founders of Wizard Ventures, so Max and Sina, and with our developer, and doing everything that needs to be done that a founder would do. So anything from testing marketing channels, getting on more customer discovery calls, creating social media content. It's a full range of tasks. And yeah, I'm excited about it. It's a huge learning opportunity, and especially nice to work alongside Max and Sina, who have experience with growing other companies and products and getting knowledge from them as well.
For sure. And I did have Max on the show last winter, just at the beginning of winter, to talk about sort of venture capital and the things that were going on in that space. Please go back and watch it if you haven't yet. It was a great show. Max is very intelligent and insightful about startups and VC stuff and all of that. But I'm curious about your role now. Was Tona sort of in the picture when you came into Wizard Ventures? Was that what attracted you to it? Or was it just come on board and we're going to build something we don't know yet? What did it look like?
Yeah, so I actually was previously with Wizard Ventures in another company within their portfolio called VC Stack. And it's a tool marketplace for VCs. And I was writing this bi-weekly newsletter for VCs in Europe and the US, and always wanted to get into a more hands-on role and a founder role. And it worked out well that we both found the pain point of competitor monitoring in various ways, but we both had that, and we worked well together, and it felt like a good transition to join them and take this on. So
very cool. Well, that's an inspiration for any of us that are sort of coming from content and marketing to there are opportunities to grow into founding roles for sure. I did a little bit more research on you. I found you're not very active on Twitter, but you have some posts there. And I found an old blog post. I think you guest posted for another publication for a couple years ago. And it talked about your backstory. Found out that you're from the Philadelphia area, from Philadelphia itself. Cool. Well, I'm from outside of Philadelphia, but I haven't lived there
Oh
for quite
wow, that's
some time.
nice.
Yeah. So, describe your journey to then Berlin,
Yeah.
as briefly as you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I went to university downtown, and my journey to Berlin was just, I honestly just made the most sense when I joined Tona. To We could work remotely, but that 6 hour time difference definitely affects a lot of the speed in which we wanted to grow. And I wasn't opposed to moving. I think that's was something I wanted to do eventually. So I actually moved end of June this summer, and I booked my flight about 5 days before I left. So it was a very like spur of the moment decision. But and I'd been to Berlin previously for a week, but obviously vacationing somewhere is very different than relocating. So it's been interesting, I think, starting a new role in a new country, new language, culture, and so on has been a lot of different types of challenges, but it's been interesting and it's good to move and at least know some people here. Max and Sina have been here for a few years, and it's been a little bit easier to transition that way. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of change for the summer, but it's
Right
fun.
on. Very cool. Well, welcome to Europe from another American who has
Thank
been living
you.
here for a while. Um,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about Berlin. I've never visited,
Mhm.
unfortunately. Hope to get there someday. But in terms of the startup scene, have you sort of been plugged into that via the guys at Wizard Ventures, or have you found your own sort of founder community, startup community there?
Yeah, so I've been slowly getting into going to more events. There's like so many events going on in Berlin in terms of like startups and VC. I go to a few like female founder events and trying to get connected to other people in this space. In Berlin, there's a huge expat community, so it's very easy to find people in a similar period of transitioning to a new country. So it's definitely a great place to be when you're in this type of industry, but there's not enough time to be to be at every event and every thing that's going on. So yeah.
Very cool. And judging from what you've written on LinkedIn, both for Tona and Wizard Ventures and your own
Mhm.
reposts and things, you do a lot of content for both of them.
Mhm.
And when you were discussing this strategy with the whole team, uh, how did you decide on these key channels, the types of content, and the goals for, I guess, Tona? Let's stick with Tona.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, in terms of channels, we mainly post content on our blog on Tona and via LinkedIn. I think that just made the most sense considering we're B2B and we're trying to target other SaaS and e-commerce startups to start with. And it made the most sense to create content there. We're also a really big fan of build in public and being very transparent with the growth process and how we are just managing, navigating this new model. We've never done anything in the SaaS model before within Wizard Ventures, so it's a learning experience for all of us. And in terms of content, it's a range of like how tos, different guides, tool lists, anything that would be helpful within the competitor monitoring space. And it's a very niche space and it's relatively untapped. So it's a really great opportunity to create content because what is out there maybe at times doesn't feel digestible or approachable. And for me, even before Wizard Ventures, I always strived to create content that was digestible and it didn't have like an ego to it, right? Like it just was easy to approach and you didn't have to have a lot of background to understand what we were saying or what we were doing because I think that's a huge part in breaking open like access to these spaces is creating content that's digestible for everyone that would need it. So
Yeah, that's a fantastic approach. Really insightful. And as far as I've seen, from what I've seen, the content it looks lovely. It is very informative.
thank you.
It's well packaged. Lots of Notion sort of frameworks and things like that as well.
Yeah.
You guys are big fans of Notion, I see.
Yeah, definitely. And also creating these like free resources and tools for anyone in the space.
All right. And I guess broadening out to Wizard Ventures, then, is Tona one of many startups to come, or what's the mission there?
With Wizard Ventures, I think so. Right now, we have a few companies within Wizard Ventures. There's Base Templates, Startup and VC, VC Stack, and Magic Design. I think the mission of Wizard Ventures is quite simple. It's to create great products and companies with the best people. So it's not really, that's kind of the essential goal of Wizard Ventures, and how we decide to pursue different projects and for the future. So,
All right. Let's dig in a little bit more to Tona then. You mentioned briefly how you were struggling with competitor monitoring and sort
yeah.
of, so how did you discover and validate the idea more thoroughly?
Yeah. So I think among the three of us, we've all hit the wall of competitor monitoring in different ways. So for me, I've been an intern in analyst positions where you're usually passed along this task of like, look through our competitors' websites and create this Excel file and show it to us in a few weeks. And what tends to happen is not only is it a time suck, and that's why it's usually being passed down to interns, but it's not referenced past completion. So you'll complete it and we'll all review it and that's it. And it's nothing is done prior to that or after that. And I think with Max and Sina, they'd had experiences with when they're building other companies and products, they will run this competitor analysis, but they always lacked a process to do it efficiently and to do it well, but also to upkeep it. So I think especially when we were doing customer discovery calls, everyone found value in competitor monitoring but didn't know how to do it in a way where we were consistently gathering information and creating actionable insights out of that. So I think from both perspectives, I think from a founder and an intern perspective, it was agreed upon that this was a pain point, and no one seemed to question why we were consistently hitting this wall. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And maybe it will be a little bit useful for any founders who are watching or would be founders to back
Mhm.
up a little bit and talk about how is competitor monitoring different from, say, competitor analysis, which is a pretty
Yeah.
well understood part of making a startup or launching a startup. So,
Yeah.
where does it fit in? How do they complement each other? How are they different?
Yeah. So I think how we like to look at it is once you're deciding to build a new startup or a new company, competitor analysis is that initial review of your market, looking at who your competitors are, maybe understanding how their product works, the features that they're offering, pricing strategies, before you start to build your own, maybe validate your own ideas and so on. With monitoring, it's this consistent review of your competitors and keeping track of them while you're growing your own company and your own products. And the issue here is oftentimes people do competitor analysis, but it's a one and done thing and it's not being referenced after that. But there's so much value in understanding how your competitors are growing, how they're adjusting to their market, because oftentimes you can tell what threats you might be facing based on how they're readjusting, or threats that they could be facing that you could take advantage of in some ways. So I think with monitoring, it's more of a consistent thing that you would do over time. And analysis is this one time review before you decide to start building. Yeah.
Awesome. And for the first version of Tona that was launched last month, it seems to
Mhm.
focus on website updates and newsletter content.
Yeah.
How did you end up at those two sort of main features? And was there anything that was sort of left on the chopping block floor that didn't
Yeah.
make it into V1?
Yeah. I mean, I think ideas in terms of features was never an issue. We have so many ideas that we wanted to build, but at the same time, we wanted to get a product out there as quickly as possible and just better understand our ideal customer and what they would need. We decided on newsletter monitoring and website monitoring as a good initial step that we could feature that we could build upon. So for newsletter monitoring, it's understanding their content strategy, understanding marketing tactics that they would use, and how they're talking to customers in this very direct almost intimate way because it's quite a direct source to your customer. And with websites, it's this maybe the largest public facing asset that a company would have, and reviewing everything that's going on from new job postings to content that they're uploading on their blog. And we thought it was a good place to start and to niche down, I guess, as we continue to understand our customer. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Having worked at several startups, though, as a copywriter, I've found that
Mm-hmm.
website updates are often can be several months behind actual
Yeah.
strategy or tactical changes, especially in startups that are early, they're moving very quickly. But
Mm-hmm.
even in established companies, once you want to update a website with new copy, it takes ages, there are more stakeholders, all of
Yeah.
that stuff. So, how do you look at this? How is this a factor when it comes to monitoring?
Yeah. So I think I definitely see your point there, and I don't think website monitoring is the end all be all, but it's, like I said, the initial feature that we wanted to start with. Ideally, the goal is to get information as early as possible. So eventually would update to job postings, for example, and understanding something like if they're opening a role for developers, you could gauge what type of feature they would be building, and from there you could predict a product release on their website before that product release is launched. So essentially, I guess it's more of a working backwards process right now until we can, like I said, niche down into these more like specific features. But yeah, it's definitely not something that you would solely rely on as just looking at their websites, but it's a part of the overall process of keeping track of your competitors.
Yeah, for sure. And if they are quite active with sort of blog posts and things, you're going to see things there before they might make
Yeah.
it onto the homepage of the site.
Yeah.
All right. So I've talked with a few founders, and they've said things like, I don't pay much attention to competition. I would rather focus on my customers, my target audience, and talk with them, build what they need. Uh, are they missing something here? Why should they be checking out Tona?
Yeah, so I think it's all about balance, right? Like any extreme is not going to be ideal. Blindly building a product is not a good way to go about it, but also racing with your competitors and trying to copy or keep track of, I don't know, trying to like match them all the time is also not ideal because you're your own company and you have your own values and mission and goals. But overall, it's important to know your market and to know who you're building around, and strategies that they're using could really complement and help you when you're building, and the ways that they pivot, the ways that they adjust their branding or their marketing strategies tells you a lot about who you're building for and maybe what you don't want to do, or maybe you want to try this new tactic out. So it is about balance. I don't think the goal is to be looking at your competitors every day for like the rest of time, but to have an awareness, and it's just more knowledge for you to build better companies.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to what you said earlier, it's sort of that static competitor analysis process that
Hmm.
it just takes a lot of time to do and then is just a snapshot of 2 months ago. It's not very
Exactly.
helpful with something like Tona. It takes less time each week, but you can sort of keep up
Yeah.
week over week as you go along. All right.
Hmm.
So I guess it's worth asking then, who is Tona competing with and how is it different?
Yeah, so I think Tona's competing with two different processes. One would be this manual work that a lot of, like I said, interns and analysts tend to do, which is scrolling through web pages, taking screenshots, building these Excel sheets or these Notion files, and then never touching them again. And then we also have more specialty tools that might be focusing solely on social media or SEO. And with Tona, our goal is to hit every point in the competitor monitoring process. So we kind of see it as like a threefold process. So finding your competitors, gathering data, and then analyzing that data to create actionable insights. And the goal with Tona is to like cover the entire range of that process in an uncomplicated way that is, like you were saying, being done consistently and not just in one moment in time, then never being addressed after that. So, yeah.
Very cool. All right. I guess to give a little bit of a broader context, we all like to talk about launching things quickly. So,
Yeah.
when did you start sort of working on Tona full time, and how long did it take to get the first version out there?
Yeah. So I think in terms of development, we started development beginning of April. I joined beginning of June, and we launched July 25th. So I would say about a 4-month process from idea to launch, which is quite quick, but it's also the way that we wanted to do it and to get feedback as quickly as possible. And within that period, running a number of customer discovery calls, doing our own competitor analysis, and understanding where we're building. Um, but yeah, I think 4 months is our timeline.
All right. And I guess just to give a picture for other founders that are thinking about building a similar B2B SaaS,
Mhm.
how many people did you talk to, and sort of what was that validation process? What did it look like on a more granular level?
Yeah, so we in terms of finding people, we used a lot of our own communities, so newsletter communities that we've built, Slack groups, other people that we know who've founded startups who have working in different competitor analysis roles, and just getting on these like 15-minute calls and understanding what process are they using, how many competitors are they analyzing, the data they're collecting and what they're doing with that data, and just allowing them to talk as much as possible and getting as much feedback. I would say within that at first idea to development to launch, maybe we would have got on like 40 to 60 calls among the three of us, and just, yeah, getting as much of a picture of how the process is going and where people tend to hit that wall and how we can help them. So, yeah.
Very cool. All right. We already talked about the features that were in the first version. So let's move on to sort of the go to market strategy. Was Product Hunt sort of the main goal for that, or was that just one step along a broader launch
Mhm.
strategy?
Yeah, I think Product Hunt was definitely a part of it, especially with our launch. We wanted to start with Product Hunt. We've had some experience in the past, and it's been a great platform to use. I think going forward, it's a mix of this build in public strategy that I was talking about via LinkedIn content and being really transparent with our growth process, and also sharing as much content as possible in competitor monitoring, building a lot of side products. So we have like these free Notion templates, Figma files, any resources that could help someone in this space, because, like I said, it's relatively untouched. And also just getting in more communities and newsletters who are targeting our ideal customer, who are talking about SaaS and in marketing as well. So, yeah. And then obviously talking to customers as much as we can and getting an idea of people that are working in this space and how they're going about their role.
Very cool. And you mentioned the Figma templates as well. And I've
Mhm.
noticed a lot of the content that comes from Wizard Ventures is designed very well. Where did you sort of pick up these skills for content design? And yeah, what
Mhm.
do you love about doing it?
That's a good question. Um, I think in terms of or what we love about doing it, it's just creating helpful resources for people. So even if they're not necessarily customers, that we're a go-to place for these resources and that we're of value to people overall. In terms of design, I think all of us appreciate good design and products that work well and that feel good to work with. And we also have under Wizard Ventures Magic Design, and we get support from them as well and from the designers on that end. So yeah, it's
Super.
a great team.
Yeah, I mean, it's all packaged very
Yeah.
beautifully. So go check out everything that Wizard Ventures and Uma puts out. So let me see. In terms of Product Hunt, you mentioned that you've done it a few times, or it was your main priority for this launch. So, what sort of strategy did you have there, and were you satisfied with the results of the product hunt launch?
Mhm. So yeah, so personally, that was my first launch, but I think
Okay.
as a team, that was their, I don't know what number, but they've had experience launching. And yeah, for that, I'm super grateful. I learned a lot from this process because I think from an outside perspective, it feels very passive to just like launch your product on this platform, but it's definitely a long-term thing. You have to prepare a lot with preparing your community, your product submission, and on launch day being very active with the comments that we're getting, the feedback. But overall, very happy with how it went. We ended with number 2 product of the day, and in terms of like access to Tona, we got like 10,000 website visits that day and close to 400 signups. So it was a successful day overall. I think the the management was definitely surprising to me, like how much we were having to engage and plan for the entire launch overall. I think looking back, the one thing we would have changed is having our product roadmap public on our websites because, like I said, we got a lot of visitors and a lot of user feedback, and they had really great insights in the comments. So having them maybe vote or put more comments into what features we might be building in the future would have been interesting as well. But overall, I think I would say pretty happy with how it went.
Yeah, and
So,
it seems like Tona is sort of perfectly made for the audience that's very active on Product Hunt. There are a lot
yeah,
of, founders, product managers, things like
yeah,
that. People that would find a lot of use with the product itself.
mm,
So, I guess you mentioned the roadmap and maybe getting some feedback on that. So, can you discuss some of the features that are in the pipeline and
yeah.
when they might go live?
Yeah, so we actually just released a feature, a heat map feature to complement the website monitoring. So right now, the website monitoring is these or these automatic screenshots that are recorded for a landing page that you would choose. And the heat map feature will now show you exactly what's changed on the website. So you're not having to go through 10 screenshots, for example, and like pinpoint what's changing. So we released that this past week, which has been exciting. And then in terms of future, we want to add newsletter analytics to the newsletter monitoring feature and a social ads feature. So tracking LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts, Instagram, and so on, because that also seems to be a really huge time suck for a lot of people in this space. And that's because content is always being pushed out there and it's hard to keep track of everyone's content. And then also reviews, customer reviews, whether that be from like Capterra or G2. That's really helpful to know what customers are finding helpful or maybe difficult with your competitor's product, and maybe reflecting a little bit on how your product is working. So yeah, that's kind of our future plans for now.
Very cool. And I think I left this question out of the outline, but it's something I ask most of my founders.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the ideal person to be using Tona today? Is it a
Mhm.
very early stage startup? Is it a more mature small business, a big enterprise? Who do you want to be on V1, sort of having a voice about what gets built next and that
Yeah.
kind of thing?
Yeah. So I think for Tona, the ideal customer would be someone who's already found product market fit. They know who their competitors are, and they just want to find a systematic way to keep track of them. I think right now we're targeting maybe small to mid size startups that have, like I said, product market fit. They know who they want to track, but they're not being able to consistently do that, and they don't have maybe the budget for a huge team to be doing that solely. So yeah, I would say that's her target.
Very cool. All right. What does success look like for Tona in sort of the medium term, let's say 6 to 8 months? And
Hmm.
what is the team or you doing now to sort of make that happen?
Yeah, so I think in 6 to 8 months, ideally we would have grown our user base. I think we would love to be supporting around 2,000 companies at that point, and just getting a better understanding of our features that the ideal customer would want. So we don't want to be building features blindly, having a good idea of what we need to prioritize, and in terms of how we're getting there, getting on as many calls as possible with people who have either been on the free trial, who are potential customers, who work in the competitive intelligence space and have an idea of the type of processes that they've built themselves, and understanding, just refining our ICP and understanding what they would need from us that would be the most valuable. So,
All right. And last couple questions, then we'll wrap up. So, what are some non-obvious challenges or delights that you've found on this journey to launching Tona?
okay. I guess challenges, this might be super personal to me, but like launching Tona and also adjusting to a new culture and a new language and a new country, I think that was not obviously intended for. It was like something that was a surprising addition to it. So um, I think that's been an interesting challenge, and also how personal it feels when you're leading a project of your own. It's very hard to separate your kind of personal beliefs, ideals, and stuff from the work that you're doing, and knowing that, like, if you have any limiting beliefs about what you're capable of, it's going to trickle into your work when you're doing something so, I don't know, like it becomes so personal because you're the only one leading it, or if you're the only full-time person, it becomes very intimate, I guess. So that has been interesting because I think as an intern or as an analyst, it's easy to kind of put a wall up between your work and your life. And this is my first full time job out of university, so it's been an interesting, uh, like, step into the real world, if you want to call it that. And yeah, so I think that's been the main challenge. And in terms of delights, I've actually found a lot of joy in um, just like the experimentation process in that. Like, it's so exciting when things work, and the emotional kind of highs and lows of when things even don't work, and going back to the drawing board, and that entire process has been very exciting in different ways. And having Max and Sina to bounce ideas off of, and now we have interns, it's been a nice, like, process of learning and growing together. And I think also onboarding interns has been surprisingly very enjoyable for me, because I I'm like, from university, I'm actually a chemist in training, and I found startups and the VC world through internships. So being able to give other students that opportunity to see the space and experience it is really, it feels like an honor to give someone that opportunity or that look, because I know for me it wouldn't have been like, internships is the reason that I'm here and that I knew I wanted to be in this space. So it's really nice to create that environment for someone else who's maybe young and in university and doesn't know what they want to do. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting perspective. I think maybe we could dig in a little bit to sort of back to the entrepreneur in residence and then
Hmm.
your role, and just how different it is to sort of have that team, even if it is pretty small. But now you have interns, so you're
Yeah.
leading someone too. Um, how different do you think it would be to just be sort of, solo founding this thing and not
Hmm.
having that support system?
Oh my God. I'm sure it would be very different. I don't think I would ever know until I fully do it and I don't have this support. But like, I know that I have days and weeks where it feels really overwhelming and difficult. And I can only imagine how that feels when you're like the only founder, you don't have a co-founder with you or anyone to bounce ideas off of. And I think that's why community, going to events, speaking to other people in the space is so important, because it can very quickly become an isolating role when this is all you do. It becomes your identity in some ways, and it's important to have people to bounce off of. And with Max and Sina, they have experience with like the emotional journey as a whole, and oftentimes whenever I bring up something where like this is how I'm feeling right now, they're always like, yeah, this is how I felt when I was building X project, and like it's just a part of the journey. You can't like stop and panic, I guess, about it. So it's a huge honor, and I think it's like an ideal condition to be doing it for me this way with a little bit support. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Especially as you said, right out of university
Yeah.
and getting into. Uh, I could ask why not chemistry, but we won't go down that road. You probably have your reasons for that. Um, well, is there anything else that you'd like people to know about Tona or about Wizard Ventures before we wrap things up?
um I don't know. I think we covered like everything that I would have liked to share today. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Are you still looking for any interns in Berlin, or you found
Mm,
everybody?
I think I've found some for now. They're actually not in Berlin. They're also on the East Coast, so
Oh, okay.
managing that time difference. But yeah, but I'm sure hopefully in the future we'll be getting some more, maybe full time. So yeah.
Okay, well, everybody go check out Tona.so and see the beautiful product that Uma and the team have built, and keep track of the people that you're competing with so you can, win as a startup quicker, faster, stronger, all that stuff. Thank you so much, Uma, for your time
Thank
today.
you.
It's been great to meet you and talk to you.
Thank you.